What about skipping breakfast? Is it good for people over 60? This is a quite important topic because about 3 or 4 years ago, intermittent fasting was big. Many influencers were advocating intermittent fasting, which often involved breakfast skipping. So breakfast skipping was very common. But then all the narrative has changed in the last few years, partly because this protein business, because the whole protein business, they said skipping breakfast or practicing intermittent fasting can create deficiency in protein intake. So the narrative has changed. But now this high protein intake business is questionable. So we might go back to the initial argument. Maybe intermittent fasting was better after all. What happens to people over 60 if they skip breakfast every day? That's something I'm going to talk about today, so stick around. Hi, my name is Hachiaki Takamiya, a 63-year-old biohacker based on Japanese natural health and the author of Live Wiser, Not Smarter. In the last video, I shared with you that a high protein diet can damage your gut health. This is not because of the high protein itself, because you have a tendency to include a lot of animal-based protein sources if you try to practice a high protein diet, and that can increase harmful bacteria in your gut. So why do you have a tendency to have a lot of animal-based protein sources if you try to practice a high-protein diet? This is because many experts who promote a high-protein diet recommend animal-based protein sources. They say animal-based protein sources have better amino acid scores. Therefore, people who follow their advice end up eating a lot of animal-based protein, especially meat. And in the video, I also shared about suppressing mTOR. This is David Sinclair's point of view. But according to David Sinclair, in order to slow down aging, you need to suppress mTOR. But mTOR is caused by a high protein diet. And he says chronic high protein intake is a problem. Therefore, I recommended that you practice intermittent fasting once or twice a week to mitigate the problem. For example, in my case, I practice 36 hours fast once a week, or you can practice 16 hours fast 2 or 3 times a week. However, this has one problem. That is, you are skipping breakfast because when you practice intermittent fasting, you often skip breakfast. This is the easiest way of practicing intermittent fasting. And then what happens to people over 60 if you do that? Now, this is a very important topic today because years ago, I mean, like maybe 3 years ago, many influencers were recommending intermittent fasting that involved breakfast skipping. In fact, many of them are skipping breakfast. But all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, but in the last 2 years or so, many of them stopped practicing intermittent fasting because of this high protein business. Yes, one of the reasons is because they felt by skipping breakfast, you have a protein deficiency. So in order to meet your daily protein requirement, they felt it was critical to have 3 meals a day. But now this high protein diet is questionable. You might wonder, maybe we should go back to practicing intermittent fasting. But is it good for people over 60? So that's something I will talk about today. So first, I will share with you the benefits of intermittent fasting because some of you may have forgotten about it since it hasn't been talked about so much these days. And drawbacks of intermittent fasting in old age and benefits of having breakfast in old age and benefits of alternate day fasting on protein cycling. What is protein cycling? I'll explain it later. And benefits of once a week prolonged fasting. And finally, is there a way to practice intermittent fasting with 3 meals? So please watch the video until the end. Those of you who just discovered this video today, this is the Ikigai diet channel, which is a health and longevity channel. We usually cover things like diet, exercise, mindset, and sometimes we cover Japanese blue zones because there are several blue zones in Japan other than Okinawa, and we cover from traditional Japanese health method to modern Japanese health trend such as chokatsu. So basically, this is the channel about how to increase health span for people over 50 or 60. So if you're interested, please subscribe to this channel. Please hit the subscribe button below. Thank you. Now, benefits of intermittent fasting. Weight loss and fat burning. Restricting your eating window to 8 hours can help reduce overall calorie intake, leading to weight loss. So I'm talking about 16-hour fast. So when I say intermittent fasting, in this case, 16-hour fast, which means you have a 16-hour fasting window and 8-hour eating window. During the fasting period, your body shifts to using stored fat for energy, potentially promoting fat burning. Improved blood sugar control. Fasting can help improve insulin sensitivity, making your body more efficient at using glucose for energy. This can be particularly beneficial for individuals with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. Reduced inflammation. Fasting can trigger cellular repair processes and reduce inflammation throughout the body. Lower inflammation is associated with a reduced risk of chronic diseases like heart disease, cancer, and neurodegenerative disorders. Cellular repair and longevity. During fasting, the body activates autophagy, a process where cells clean out damaged components and recycle them. Autophagy is believed to contribute to longevity and protect against age-related diseases. Now, as far as autophagy activation is concerned, there are many different steps or different kind of types of autophagy activation, like a sort of a clean up different parts of the body. And for longevity, for the autophagy activation for longevity, often they say you need a prolonged fasting. So 16 hours fasting may not be enough, but it can activate autophagy for other function. Therefore, 16 hours fasting has benefit. Improved brain function. Some studies suggest that fasting can enhance cognitive function, memory, and mental clarity. This might be due to increased production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, a protein that supports brain health. Gut health. Fasting may positively influence the gut microbiome, increasing diversity and promoting the growth of beneficial bacteria. This can lead to improved digestion, immunity, and overall gut health. So this is precisely what I've talked about in the last 2 videos. So remember this Stanford new study, the human aged dramatically in 2 births at age 44, then age 60. So many of the function deteriorate after age 60, and especially immune system decline. And the gut health is in charge of the immune system. For example, bifidobacteria, one of the good bacteria in your gut, bifidobacteria levels tend to decrease in the gut with age, particularly after the age of 60. Bifidobacteria, type of beneficial bacteria that are particularly abundant in the infant gut and play a crucial role in maintaining gut health and homeostasis throughout life. They are known to inhibit the growth of harmful bacteria and contribute to overall gut balance. As people age, especially after 55 and 65, the population of bifidobacteria in the gut tends to decrease. This decline is often accompanied by an increase in less beneficial or even potentially harmful bacteria. Right. But fasting can help this situation. Well, that means those of us who are over 60, fasting may be beneficial. All right. So drawbacks of intermittent fasting in old age. Nutrient deficiency. Now, one thing many people say is this, especially protein deficiency. In fact, one reason that many influencers stopped intermittent fasting was because of protein deficiency. They felt just having 2 meals a day was quite difficult to have a sufficient amount of protein, especially when you skip breakfast, because morning is the most important time to absorb protein, and it's the most effective time to absorb protein, like before 10 a.m. Therefore, breakfast is a precious meal if you want to optimize your protein intake. Okay, so let's look at the benefits of having breakfast in old age. Regulating the rhythm of gut bacteria. Gut bacteria are closely related to our sleep-wake rhythm. Eating breakfast resets the internal clock and also regulates the rhythm of gut bacteria activity. This leads to the promotion of digestion and absorption and activation of metabolism. Providing food for good bacteria. Gut bacteria, especially good bacteria, proliferate by feeding on dietary fiber and oligosaccharides. By taking these components in breakfast, you can promote the growth of a good bacteria and improve the intestinal environment. So just like protein, you want to absorb fiber and oligosaccharides in the morning. The morning is a precious time to do that because you have an absence from food for 12 to 14 hours during your sleep, and your gut bacteria are hungry too. They need some food, so you want to feed them right in the morning. Relieving constipation. Eating breakfast stimulates the gastrocolic reflex, promoting peristaltic movement that encourage bowel movement. In addition, the intake of dietary fiber increases the bulk of stool, helping to make bowel movement smoother. Increasing body temperature and metabolism. Eating breakfast raises body temperature and boosts basal metabolism. This promotes fat burning and also leads to a body that is less prone to gaining weight. Brain activation and improved concentration. By replenishing blood sugar levels that have dropped during sleep, it secures the energy source for the brain and improves concentration and memory. It also promotes the secretion of serotonin, leading to mental stability. Other appetite control. Skipping breakfast may lead to overeating at lunch or dinner. Stabilizing lifestyle rhythm. A regular eating pattern is important for establishing a lifestyle rhythm and leading a healthy life. And in my opinion, there's another reason why Westerners in particular shouldn't skip breakfast. So I said both natto and yogurt are critical for your gut health because natto can provide you with natto bacteria and yogurt can provide you with bifidobacteria. Those two probiotics are particularly important, but for details, please watch my other video. The actual title is What Happens to People Over 60 If They Don't Eat Natto and Yogurt Every Day. And in my case, I have natto salad and soy yogurt muesli. And this soy yogurt muesli is especially important. So muesli is a popular European breakfast, but I think this is one of the most nutrient dense meal. This is one of the best meals in that sense, especially from the point of view of protein and fiber. You can have sufficient amount of protein and fiber just from this one meal. Okay, so let's look at actual ingredient in this muesli. So it has oats, super barley max, or any kind of barley is fine. Both oats and barley are wonderful whole grain to support your gut health. And then almonds, walnuts, and cashews. So nuts, and then pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds. So both nuts and seeds are wonderful. And then blueberries and kiwi, so great fruit. And finally, homemade soy yogurt with bifidobacteria. So the great thing about this dish is it's all plant-based. So it includes a lot of plant-based protein sources and fiber. Therefore, you can have a high amount of protein without risking your gut health. Including the natto salad, you can reach 40 grams of protein. And once you do that, it becomes easier to plan your lunch and dinner. And usually you want to eat muesli for breakfast, not for lunch or dinner. So skipping breakfast means you're missing this wonderful opportunity to have muesli. So as you can see, there are certain benefits to having breakfast for gut health as well. So this is not a protein alone. So even though this high protein business is not relevant to you, let's say you don't need that much protein. So therefore, maybe you could get away with just 2 meals a day. That's possible by skipping breakfast. But then if you skip breakfast, you are not optimizing your gut health either. So that's another issue really. But intermittent fasting have benefit as well for your gut health as well. So both are good. So it's really, in a way, kind of trade-off. You need to choose between the two, or their kind of balance is important. But what if I told you that you don't have to practice the same thing every single day? So that will bring to the next topic. All right, so benefits of alternate day fasting on protein cycling. So what is protein cycling? So autophagy and mTOR. Autophagy is the cellular recycling mechanism which is important for longevity. It helps slowing down aging. And mTOR is the major regulator of growth. It is the opposite of autophagy. It inhibits autophagy, and autophagy inhibits mTOR. And mTOR is activated by a high protein diet. Therefore, David Sinclair says you should avoid a high protein diet, or at least avoid chronic high protein intake. That is where the concept of protein cycling comes in. So many people advocate this, but one of the advocates of this protein cycling is James Clement, who is the author of The Switch. So he says that you don't need to constantly activate autophagy, or you don't need to constantly activate mTOR. You can kind of cycle between the two. For example, you can activate autophagy for 8 months of the year, and you can activate mTOR for 4 months of the year. Or you can activate autophagy for 2 months. And then next month, you can activate mTOR. And then next 2 months, you can activate autophagy and so on. Other people talk about this protein cycling in slightly kind of different way. For example, Dr. Mindy and Naomi Whittle talked about this protein cycling too. Dr. Mindy says you can activate autophagy for 5 days, then activate mTOR for 1 day. And Naomi Whittle says you can practice alternate day fasting to practice this protein cycling. So the one that I shared with you before is basically Naomi Whittle's idea. So you have a 6-hour fast on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but Tuesday and Thursday and weekend you have 3 meals. I don't know what she said about the weekend, though. I mean, this is my idea about having 3 meals both Saturday and Sunday, because it's kind of easier to do this way. Otherwise, if you did 3 meals on Saturday and 16-hour fast on Sunday, then you need to change the days every week. It's a little more confusing. So this system is simpler. When you practice this, for example, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you can have about 0.8 to 1.0 gram of protein if you have just 2 meals a day. But Tuesday, Thursday, and a weekend, you can have about 1.6 gram of protein. So this way, you can alternate a low protein intake day and high protein intake day. All right, benefits of once a week prolonged fasting. So I said I practice 36 hours fast every Monday. So what is the benefit? Now, prolonged fasting is usually 24 hours or longer, and often autophagy activation for longevity happens in prolonged fasting, not like a short fasting such as 16-hour fast. You can activate autophagy for other functions, but for longevity, it is usually considered nowadays that prolonged fasting is better. We don't really know exactly how long you need to fast to activate autophagy for longevity. Even 36 hours may not be sufficient. You probably need 72 hours. We don't know exactly, but the longer you fast, the better it is. So in this sense, 24 hours fasting is better than 16 hours fasting, and 36 hours fasting is even better. And because you do it only once a week, you skip breakfast only 1 day a week. In other words, you have breakfast 6 days a week to gain the benefit of breakfast. So in many ways, I find this is a sweet spot. But isn't there a way to practice intermittent fasting with 3 meals? Meaning, if you decide to have breakfast 7 days a week, can you not practice intermittent fasting? Well, there is a way. According to Dr. Sachin Panda, who is the founding executive member of the Center for Circadian Biology at the University of California, San Diego, he recommends 14 hours fasting. By setting your eating window between 9 a.m. and 7 p.m., you can do that. So you can have 3 meals within that eating window and you still practice 14 hours fasting. It's not as good as 16 hours fasting, but still you have a sufficient hours of fasting. Usually you need at least 12 hours of fasting period. So even if you have 3 meals, it is still better to have a 12 hours of fasting, but 14 hours, it gives 2 more additional hours. And this is even better, Dr. Sachin Panda says, because he doesn't think it's a good idea to eat right after waking up. You need to give 2 hours after waking up. This is better for the circadian rhythm too. So in many ways, this eating window, like if you get up at 7 a.m., maybe eating at 9 o'clock is probably the best time to have breakfast. And in my case, I do both. So I do 36 hours fast on Monday, but from Tuesday to Friday, I practice 14-hour fast. So in a way, I practice fasting 5 days a week. The weekend, I don't set any specific eating window. I get to eat freely, so I don't practice fasting on the weekend. But at least 5 days a week, I practice some form of intermittent fasting. So this really is the sweet spot because I get to practice intermittent fasting, but I have 3 meals a day for 6 days a week, meaning I have breakfast 6 days a week. And this is also fine too. I mean, some people, maybe this is easier. It depends on people. You just need to try it. You just need to experiment it to see which you like better. For details about fasting, please read Live Wiser, Not Smarter, chapter 4, the ideal fasting to increase health span. Okay, so to sum up, what happens to people over 60 if they skip breakfast every day? Well, if you skip it every day, that can be a problem. Probably you will have nutrient deficiency such as protein and fiber. But if you skip breakfast few times a week, that is a different story. So the problem is skipping it every single day. Okay, thank you for watching. Again, my name is Hachiaki Takamiya, the author of Live Wiser, Not Smarter. If you like this video, please give me your thumb up and subscribe to my channel. And please leave your comment. What do you think of this protein cycling? And which sweet spot do you find it the most practical? So please write what you like in the comment section below. Okay, and I talked about this new Stanford study about aging accelerate at age 44 and age 60, how to combat other than about your gut health. I made another video for it, which is this one, so please watch it.